the the endorsements they're putting on, documentation that we're relying on. And just a couple of visual images. There will be some people here who have had the opportunity to go out with members of my team and actually have a look at some of the more challenged construction sites we've got on board. Normally what happens is we simply look at the list and see what we've got on for the day across the region, and then just go and visit some of the sites in question. And this one here is a masonry block wall. I don't think you need to be any kind of expert to work out that's a problem. Here we have some foundations which have been cut away for some reason. Obviously someone felt there was too much concrete there. They've exposed the structural steel in there, which of course is problematic. That connection is not fit for purpose. There's a two-storey building sitting on top of that post. And here this unfortunately is quite common. We've got part of a steel portal frame that's been incorrectly seated on some foundations. As you can see, those bolts on either side are actually supposed to be anchored into the foundations to provide support. So at best, they've got half what they're supposed to have there. And unfortunately, this isn't unusual. I could show many photographs of this. Now this one's probably 6 months old, this photo, but it is a classic. That's a jib handy-brack. We use it for providing structural support for timber framing. It was found with that instruction sheet which comes with it and the screw bolts that are supposed to be used. Unfortunately, someone thought it was better to just whack some nails in. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the same holding capability as it should. And the disturbing thing about this is the instructions and the bag that it came from was sitting directly next to it. So the person who took that photograph has simply picked them up and moved them probably a matter of 30 centimetres to take the photograph. So really concerning. Here we have discontinuous foundations, and as you can see already that masonry block wall is probably only 2 months old and it's beginning to settle, and you can start seeing cracks appearing there. There's no way that would be able to perform. This photograph's probably 9 months old, and I must say I was trying to find some more recent ones. We've got lots. In this instance, we ended up with a complaint from the neighbour whose house you can just see at the back. He was concerned that his house was going to end up in the neighbour's property because the consent conditions of this building consent weren't being followed. No retaining wall, temporary retaining wall put in to protect that cut face in the middle of winter. The concerning thing about this was that there was a structural engineer involved and a licensed building practitioner. We laid complaints about both of them. And you see all of that reinforcing steel sticking out of those foundations. All of them were able to be pulled out by hand. None of them penetrated the concrete more than 2 centimetres. Getting things lined up can always be a challenge. Now the first photograph on the left is an internal wall of a townhouse, 2-storey townhouse that will probably sell for $800,000 or $900,000. And as you can see, it's not quite straight.
Sorry.
Now the disturbing thing about this is that somebody has actually put that wall up and framed it. Someone else has probably come along and put the jib up and stopped it, and possibly someone else has come along and painted it, and no one has taken any responsibility for it at all. Yeah. And in this other photograph, this is another job. Here we have a 2-storey building that's actually sitting on top of that piece of foundations, which that nib wall that obviously also we weren't able to put in straight. This is you might think quite a minor thing. There's a transitional flashing that goes over the edge of that barge flashing, and it's exposed, so the timber is actually now exposed and water can get in. So there's another example of, I guess, how we end up with weather tightness issues. But our building inspectors, when they turn up on site for that half-hour inspection or however long they're there for, will need to pick up things like that. Now seriously, my team are there to ensure that quality control exists on site. They're not there to provide quality control for the site. And unfortunately, the latter is the type of role my team have to play a certain number of sites. So we've got some great guys out there. We've got some of the best building practitioners in the world working in New Zealand. Unfortunately, we've also got some other folk there who obviously need some supervision and a bit more direction. And clearly, at the moment, they're not getting enough of it. Now this is really disturbing. So this is a steel portal frame. This is a 2-storey building sitting over this, and somebody has inserted some untreated timber packings underneath there, presumably to level it up. As well as this, there was 7 pre-lining inspections on this job had failed. 7. So it's basically around putting the jib up and making sure that you've got the nailing patterns in correctly. They failed 7 times. So, you know, there's a real competency issue out there with some of our folk, and our building inspectors, when they're doing their 130,000 inspections, need to be picking this sort of stuff up. In terms of solutions, coping with increased sector activity, we're taking a holistic approach to dealing with the challenges that we've currently got. So we've got an active recruiting program. We're really trying to provide the best developmental program that we believe will exist in the industry at Auckland Council, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. We're trying to leverage as much as we can off technology, and I'll expand on that shortly, and also to improve the way we deliver our processes, become more joined up, more integrated, and a lot of those initiatives are all sitting under a large regulatory program we've got running at the moment called Consenting Made Easier. A lot of that's also about enabling the industry and enabling our customers so they've got a better understanding of the process they're engaging in. What are some of the traps are, what are some of the things they should be thinking about, so that when they actually get to that point, they're a lot more informed and they can make the right decisions about who they engage to be their designer, their builder, and how they can work efficiently. We've got a, what's we got? And the last thing is actually trying to increase our virtual capacity by making use of other suppliers, and I'll touch on that in a minute. So very quickly, we've developed a training school that runs for six weeks. We're getting people from other territorial authorities sending staff to those now. We're pretty much running them back to back. And really it's all around trying to get our people up to speed as fast as we possibly can. Believe it or not, it takes even someone who's been in the industry all their lives about 3 or 4 months before they can be productive at any level of competency. So if we can speed that up, that's a real benefit for us. We've got a graduate program where we're taking some great young people out of the tertiary institutions. We've taken, over the last 3 years, 6 folk, and we're ramping that up to 10 or 11 for next year. That's working really well for us. In terms of technology, we're finalising the deployment of mobile technology for our building inspectors so they can be more efficient in the way that they're recording issues on site and recording those details. So we get some capacity, some more capacity out of that. We're extending what we call phase 3 of our online consenting. So it's a digital lodgement, digital processing capability. It's available for selected group home builders at the moment, and we're looking at expanding that across a wider customer group over the next couple of months. And again, that will make us a lot more efficient in the way that we process, and it's going to make life a lot easier for a lot of the industry, because you create stuff digitally, you don't want to print it out into hard copy and supply it to the council. You'd much rather submit it digitally. So, and we'd much rather have them do that and be able to process digitally. Partnering with professional affiliations, look, we have great relationships with other members of the industry. We've got lots of different initiatives going with certified builders, master builders, Auckland masonry trades, which really will make a big difference, and they're beginning to make that now. We've got a new qualification structure for our building surveyors, again to try and make working for the council and building control the sort of thing that people want to do as a vocation. I'd certainly encourage anyone who wants to work in the building construction industry to seriously think about working in building controls. You cannot get a better start to your time in the industry and working for us. And what we got? And so, okay, solutions for coping with increased sector activity. We've set up contracts with Porirua City Council and with Wellington City Council to process consents for us. This isn't a new thing. We've processed consents for Christchurch and various other provincial centres over the years. It's great that these councils are able to utilise some of their competency and the capacity they've got to be able to assist us when we need the assistance. When I say cope, we're coping with the volume at the moment. We've got a lot of strategies that will increase our effective capacity, but as you've seen earlier when you looked at Sally's slides, it's actually beginning to impact on our service levels, and we're very keen to make sure that any impact is minimalised in these difficult times. So we're making use of that capacity. We're talking to a number of other New Zealand-based suppliers, and those conversations are working well, and we're also talking to a potential supplier in the UK. Some folk would say UK, that's an awfully long way to be, away, but when you think about this digital channel we've now got, we've actually got the ability to move our work almost at the speed of light, but not quite, to any other supplier that we find is fit for purpose and can do our work. There are other jurisdictions in the world that have similar building controls systems to New Zealand. UK is one of them, particularly around commercial development. So a lot of commercial development is very similar. Certainly there's probably some significant differences in residential work between us and even our neighbours in Australia, but commercial, a lot of similarity there. So we've got great hopes that we'll be able to move in that area. One of the other things which is unlike probably a lot of other areas is that we've got a requirement by December 2018 to ensure that every single person in my team who makes a technical decision on a building consent, whether they're processing it, whether they're doing inspections on it, whether they're issuing a code compliance certificate, and they have an appropriate qualification. The appropriate qualifications that established by central government were bachelors of Bachelor of Architecture, Bachelor of Engineering, Masters in Engineering, Masters in Architecture. You get the picture. There's quite a large number of my folk who don't have those sorts of qualifications, so basically didn't pick up really any of the trade qualifications at all. As a result, over the last 2.5 years, I've been putting my team through a program that was developed by some of my team with skills organisation and ITO, an assessment of prior learning course which enables them to be compared against their experience compared against a diploma in building surveying. So over and above everything else we've been doing, we've managed to qualify 114 of our team. So they've been studying in their spare time. We've been providing support to them to be able to get them through their qualification. We've got another 62 to get through, and that will basically deal with most of our folk. Which will be really good. We're also working with the Building Officers Institute at the moment to develop a taught version of that qualification. We've been working on that for probably the last 3 years, and that is about to kick off very shortly. So it's a great way of any young people who are out there who are looking at a job in building control to start studying to get that qualification, and they'll just fly in and they'll have a wonderful time. So, yeah, so it would be fair to say we're fairly busy. Any questions?
Thank you, Ian. I mean, very interesting. And just very quickly, I think there's a feeling that some of the competent builders are feeling frustrated with the amount of paperwork and things they have to go through, and they became builders rather than going to university to get degrees on, being consultants, and they don't like that, so that's an issue. Have we thought of grading, like we grade food premises? I mean, would you grade sort of builders so that you deal with the dreadful ones and they get flagged, and when somebody goes to get a job from them, they say, well, look, I'm an A grade builder from Auckland Council or something? Is there a possibility of doing something like that?
Better than going on the website and looking at No More Cowboys.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's a very complex question you ask. I guess the first part of it is that central government have tried that with the licensed building practitioner scheme, and it's at a fairly low level of maturity at the moment. It's obviously got some work. Yeah. It'd be fair to say there's some folk there who have the same qualification as some really, really competent people who really don't have much competency at all. And I guess we're going through a process at the moment of identifying those folk, and I guess enabling them to upskill or seek other opportunities in another industry. So there is, But the challenge we've got, there's sort of three things that will enable us to reduce regulatory oversight. One, it's the complexity of the work. So that's easy for us to work out. We can understand what that work is from the application. We've got plans, we can understand that. The second thing is the competency of the person doing the work. Now, in some cases, in many cases, we have direct experience of certain folk in the industry. My team would be able to identify a whole range of our top building practitioners, and they'll be able to say, look, these guys hardly ever have any failed inspections. These guys are really, really good. But the third thing is the tricky thing. So remember when I was talking about construction is now a complex collaboration of specialists. So the days when one person did everything or his team did everything have gone, largely gone. And so we end up with system. What's the system that the people are working in? And it would be fair to say mostly in the residential sector at the moment, you don't see a lot of quality assurance systems or tools. They're quite tricky to set up and actually make them easy to use and get benefit out of them. But that's, I guess, the challenge. How we need the system. So there's some work that brands are doing at the moment, which we're involved with, on a quality assurance tool. And I've spoken about this before. Making an easy quality assurance tool where a builder can actually identify what are the attributes of the work they're doing, and it would actually enable them to have some type of bespoke tool that they can use to guide them and help them manage all of the complex relationships they have to on that job.